Okie dokie. Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to get a drink.
So I'm going to do a couple of demos today. Hands up if there's any Germans in the audience first. Because they're both German bakes and I can't pronounce them, so I won't be corrected, so it's fine. So we'll go for the Essex version of what we're making. The first one's going to be Lebkuchen, in my best German accent that was, which is a German ginger spice biscuit. And it's got a slight glaze over the top as well, and I'll be stabbing and making a little pretty little snowflake cookie from Nordic Ware, which is just over there if you want to have a look. Brilliant little brand, little plug for them, but I love their baking stuff. This is a super simple recipe to make, great for Christmas. Put them in a Tupperware box, they last a few days. I've got almonds in, so they do keep a little bit of moisture in there as well. So great cookie to make over the Christmas period, and great for making with kids as well, because basically it's melting and stirring, and then a bit of rolling up. So it's even myself, an ex-GBBO baker, can't mess these up, and we messed a lot up in the tent. So we'll get going. So first, what we want to do is to warm up some honey, butter, and some lemon zest together. Now we're going to need 200 millilitres of honey. You could measure that into a little jug and then pour that into your pan, but I weighed it out previously when I've done this recipe because I hate lots of washing up. So I'm just going to measure it. It's about 260, 270 grams. This recipe is really forgiving. If you're a few grams out either way, really doesn't matter. It's probably about 3/4 of a bottle, and this is the sugar that's going to be in here. There's no other sweetener apart from a very light glaze on top. And if you've got any bake-off questions or any baking questions, fire them at me. If I'm kind of looks like I've got a pause and I'm not really doing much. So there we go. So we'll start warming that up. Move that out of the way. And I'm so happy they've got Neff equipment. In the tent, everything is Neff. And I had pre-bake-off, so I was on 2017 and Christmas 2020. We had a really old kitchen that I've been promising my wife for years that we would remodel. But I applied for the bake-off 3 years running, so I said, we can't remodel in case I get on, and we don't want to have no kitchen. So we patiently waited for 3 years, but I fell in love with the ovens and the hobs, so we ended up getting fished in and bought all Neff stuff, which has been brilliant and lasted really well. So I've put this on a sort of a medium heat. We're going to add our butter to it, so we're going to add around 85, straight on my glasses, brilliant, couldn't have planned that better. 85 grams of butter goes in there as well. And we're just going to let that happily melt away with the zest of a lemon. Gives it a little bit of freshness and brightness in the cookie. If you don't like zested fruit, and once you've zested it, keep the lemon, put it in your gin and tonics, whatever. Don't throw away the actual core of it. I was teaching someone, a group to bake. It was a hen do, about 20 ladies, all have been on the Prosecco all day, and we were making something very similar. So I was going around saying, right, you've got to zest the lemon. So I left the first one, going around the next one, started zesting. By the time I got back to the first person, she had literally grated the whole lemon, flesh and everything. So I wasn't very clear on what I meant by zesting. Can't blame her. So you've just taken the bright yellow bit of the skin off, and that's where all the oils and the flavour is that really gives you the nice, fresh, bright lemon flavour. You don't want to go too far into the white, that gets bitter. These are unwaxed lemons. If you don't know if they're waxed or unwaxed, in the supermarket they always say, just run them under hot water and give them a good wash, and then any wax, it's just a preservative. It won't kill you. I've used it just with the wax on. It's food grade, but I prefer to get unwaxed if I can. So again, zest the whole lemon in there while that's melting away. And I've stuck the oven on to 160 fan, so that'll be 180 conventional. Never used gas in my life, so you'd have to Google it, very sorry. Unless I put it on the recipe, I'm not sure, maybe not. Right, so that's all in there. I'm just going to let that warm up. While that's warming up, I'm going to go to my dry ingredients, which again is very simple. We've got 250 grams of plain flour. We have around 85 grams of ground almonds. So for allergies, I've got some samples. There is obviously dairy and nuts in these. We will be using egg white that's raw. If an egg's got the sort of the crown print on it, it means that they shouldn't have salmonella. But if you're pregnant, obviously, be careful. But most royal icing is icing sugar and egg white and a little bit of water. So I've survived so far, but please obviously take care. So we've got flour and almonds in there, and then we put in lots of different spices which make these absolutely delicious. So we start with 2 teaspoons of ground ginger. And again, if you like more or less of each spice, you can mix it up a bit, but this is a good starting point. 1 of cinnamon, getting all those Christmassy flavours in there. My kids moaned that there wasn't enough ginger last time, so I now have to put 3 gingers in there, but they're a fussy bunch that I live with. Then we're going to go some ground cloves, that gives it a bit of warmth. Cloves are very strong, so I just go, it says a pinch, but which is about 1/8 of a teaspoon. Then we go nutmeg, another great Christmas spice. I've got whole ones that I just grate in. Just use the same grater that I used on the lemon. Again, it says a pinch, so about probably 1/8, 1/4 of a nutmeg, or if you've got the nutmeg powder, a pinch, 1/8 of a teaspoon. So there are all the spices that we've got. Oh no, black pepper. Sounds odd in a cookie. It just gives it warmth. It doesn't taste very peppery, but with the cloves and the black pepper, it just gives you that Christmas warmth in your cookie. So again, just about 1/8 of a teaspoon, a few grinds popped in there. We do want them to puff a bit because you're pouring sort of your fats and sugars in. It's quite a dense dough. But once you get in the oven, if you put a couple of raising agents, so we go for a teaspoon of baking powder and 1/2 a teaspoon of bicarb of soda, they will puff up a little bit and it'll just make them a bit lighter, so you'll keep your teeth as you're chewing through them. So a teaspoon of baking powder. And 1/2 a teaspoon of bicarb. Can't see this at the moment, it's still melting away, so we've got a little bit of time there. So once you've got all of your dry ingredients, what I generally do is just stir it around, just to mix it all in, so it comes a nice even colour, so you know you've got all your spices distributed, your raisin agent, so as you mix it, you know it's going to be nice and even. Turn this up a little bit. We had a lovely day when we first went in, first day in the tent. They send a representative of NEF there to teach you how to use the ovens, because everyone's oven at home, after you're used to your own oven. So they go through, they're super efficient, which they are. If you bake something at 170 on your own fan, do it at 160, they gave all these tips. Everyone's first cake come out rubbish. I had the worst soggy bottom going, I think Prue said. If you had a cup of custard on it, it would be a lovely pudding. Wasn't what I was going for, not a great start. But you soon learn how it compares to your own oven. So Yanni, lovely lady who was on our year, her oven was held together with a wooden spoon and one of those big metal bulldog clips at home. So she's got no idea of what temperature's in her oven, but she's just used to it. She bakes a lot of bread, just got used to it. So everyone comes from different kind of environments. I think Chris at the time was living in France, so he'd got a cottage so he could practice, and again, never used the oven before, so it was really nice using good quality kit that was consistent, and regardless of what bench you got out of the 8, you knew your oven was going to bake exactly the same as the one you just used, which was great. And they test them. They put a Victoria sandwich in every one to make sure they all cook to the same time, same rise, same colour, so they're well calibrated, so it makes it nice and easy for everyone. So you didn't have, and you was randomly assigned your benches on every day, so you kind of moved around, so there was no deemed favourite, but everyone's favourite bench, as you're looking at the bakers from where Paul and Prue stand, is the back left, because you can see what everyone's doing and you're out of trouble as well. It's kind of the naughty kids at the back of the class. Right, so this is nearly melted, so just a little bit more to go. And this is why it's such a simple bake to do with grandkids, kids, or even yourself. It doesn't take long to do. As I say, just a bit of melting and a bit of measuring out ingredients. You don't have to spend a lot of time rubbing butter in. And yes, you can. Yeah, you just use a little drop. Also, if you don't want to waste lots of fruit by just zesting, I use something called spice drops, which are an essence or an extract, I should say, from real lemon. So it actually tastes like lemon zest or orange zest, and they do clove oils and various other cinnamon. You see people in the tent over the last couple of years have really started using these a lot, because some of the supermarket extract, is it essences? No, so these are extracts. The essences can be more chemically made. They may not be lemons, there'll be various things that ultimately end up tasting like a lemon. They never taste quite right, and if you put too much in it, you get an odd flavour. So if you can go for an extract over an essence, that's your best bet. Right, so this is all melted now, apart from one little stubborn piece. That's probably the bit that was on my glasses. So we just pour it in to your dry mix. Yeah, turn my hob off. And then we just stir it until it's combined. And this is the bit I normally stir too vigorously and just spray myself in flour. I should have put on one of my aprons, but I'm going to be brave. Because it's a hot mix and you've melted butter, once it's mixed, you want it to cool down to room temperature. Ideally, put it in the fridge overnight so it's nice and firm when you're scooping it. Just makes it a lot easier. It'll be very hard to keep the shape in this state at the moment, but fortunately, Bake Off and Blue Peter have a lot in common. I've got one I've made earlier over here that I can divvy out. So that's the sort of texture you're looking for. It looks quite soft there, but as it cools down and as the flour absorbs some of the moisture, it sets up nicely. Any cookies that you make, if you're making chocolate chip cookies, even though it doesn't say rest in the fridge overnight, put them in the fridge overnight, you get a lot richer, deeper flavour. And it's just the way that the liquid ingredients interact with the flour and it matures. So most of the bakers that we've been on the show with now generally do overnight cookies. If you've got kids, I know that doesn't work because they want to eat them immediately if they're not eating the dough out of the bowl. But if you pop them in the fridge, a bit cling them over, leave them for a day, they're perfect.
Same for gingerbread as well? Or does that go too hard?
That may go too hard. You could put it in there to mature and then leave it out on the side to warm up a bit. So this dough's been in the fridge all night. I was on a couple of hour drive down here. You can see it's firmed up a lot. If I left that another half hour, it would probably be a perfect consistency for scooping. Now, this mix makes 30, you do get treats after. You can do 30-ish small cookies. They're about 20 gram cookies. Or you can go big, because I like the big stamps. And it makes probably 12 to 18 big cookies, I'd say. So it's a nice versatile dough. You could even freeze this, like use what you want and freeze the rest and then get it out, let it thaw overnight. If you don't want to eat a whole batch of 30 cookies in one go. Totally acceptable. So now I've got my oven on 160 fan, that's preheated. I've got lined baking sheets. I use these silicone reusable mats just because I do so much baking. I just hate throwing away lots of greaseproof paper, and they last forever. You just wash them up as you wash your tins up. I'm lazy and never dry a tin. What I do is I throw it in the oven that's still hot after I've baked and let it dry out. And generally, the top tin's probably my oldest tin. Often if you just dry them out by sort of hand cloths, you get little bits of rust under that roll where you can't get to the water. And I find an oven kind of keeps your tins a bit longer if you dry it out that way because the steam pushes out the water. So if you wanted to do, if I was on the show on Biscuit Week, I would weigh each individual ball to make sure it's exactly the same size because they can get very fussy. On Biscuit Week we had to make Viennese wild biscuits. So we had to make 24 biscuits, so I needed 48 halves. So I measured them out, weighed them all out, counted them, 47, or I was one half short. Couldn't work it out, counted them again. And then Paul come over and started heckling me because I work in a bank, so I should be able to count. And then Sandy, and they'll come over and they was laughing and joking. So I ended up having to make half a batch again just to get one extra half of cookie. Baked them all, paired them all up, and I had half left. It was just my tent head and the panic, I couldn't count. So I didn't need to bake the extra half, so I gave Sandy my extra half a biscuit that she could nibble on while she was doing the rest of her chat. But you do get things that, because of the pressure of the tent, and you see people baking, and I bet you're all screaming at the tent, oh, why are you doing that? Or that staff, that's not going to work. Even as amateur bakers, I used to do that when I've always been a fan of the show. But until you're under the pressure of the heat, you don't realise the silly things that you can easily forget. On Caramel Week, which was probably about week 4, we had to make millionaire shortbreads. And I had 2 types of brown sugar that I was going to put in my caramel. I put in one, so I only put in half the amount of sugar that I should have done. So my caramel was really thin. So I didn't mention it, because the second you say anything out loud, because you're mic'd up, the camera crews turn round and they like hound on you like a pack of wolves. They know there'll be some good telly. So sometimes you're happy to concede, other times you think, it's a tricky week. I was a bit worried on that week, because I don't want to bring any undue attention, so I just hit the bowl of sugar that I hadn't used. And I heard Paul and Prue arguing about how much caramel they should be, and I think Prue was in the camp that she likes a thin layer, and Paul was like, no, need it really thick. So when they was tasting it, Paul immediately picked up, well, your caramel doesn't seem very deep. I said, no, I'm exactly like Prue. I like a really thin layer. I blacked my way out of it. It was very lucky. They never caught me on that one. They caught me on lots of other stuff. But so I use a scoop because life's too short to weigh out every individual biscuit. This is for a big size. I've got a smaller scoop that's probably about 2-3 teaspoon size if I'm going to do the smaller biscuits. So you just take a scoop, roll it out about 6 to a tray. And again, they expect perfection in the show, but reality is when we're all baking at home, we're just like home bakers. We're all home bakers when we go there. We just learn a lot as we go through the process. And I always feel sorry for the first person or the first few people who go out, because you get the briefs before you go into the tent, so you start hearing about them probably 7-8 weeks before you start filming, because you've got to submit a brief back to the food tech people so they can check that it's just not something you printed off the internet and you just do that. It has to be your own inspired bake, and also to make sure that it meets what they're trying to do that weekend. But if you watch Taskmaster, I'm not sure if anyone does, the contestants on Taskmaster often ask for more help or more clues, and he says, you've got your clue on the piece of paper, we're not going to give you any more. And that's how the food tech team. So you ask them a question to say, does this meet the brief? And they're like, what do you think? And it used to be really frustrating, but they are a really good team though, they are exceptionally helpful, but on the brief they want it to be 100% yours. So there's 6. I'm going to bake these real time, so I will do them all. Maybe this will make 12. Yeah, so filming, when I did it, which was before COVID, we filmed pretty much every weekend. So we would meet up on a Friday evening in a hotel near the venue, and it's filmed just near Heathrow Airport, sort of M25, M4 corridor, a place called Welford Park, a stately home that they open up a couple of times a year, but most of the year it's got the bake-off tent plonked in their back garden. And the owners are bonkers. They come wandering round, and they'll be filming, and they'll be popping in, having something to eat, seeing what it's like, and then they wander off. One year, I think the year before us, their Christmas card to all their friends was all the bake-off bakers. They got all the bake-off bakers to get a photo near their Christmas. It wouldn't be their Christmas tree, near their trees on the thing. So yes, you would film pretty much every weekend. You stay there Friday night, Saturday night. On the earlier ones, because there's so many bakers, and the days are long. They generally recommend you stay Sunday and go back Monday. But after kind of the second weekend, everyone was going home sort of Sunday night. We said we'd rather drive and be in our own beds for a night. And because it's so secretive, the filming, they put you in different hotels. All the bakers are together, but they put you in different hotels under pseudonyms. So it's super secret the way they do it, and they keep you separate from the guests. But one thing we realised on day one, having quite a merry bunch of bakers who like to drink, shall we say, is that on Friday we all checked in with our pseudonyms because the production company pay for all that, and that's great. And then you go to the bar and then you immediately give them your credit card when you pay your bar bill, and they know exactly who you are. It's just like the mystery lasted minutes, if that. But yeah, they're long old days in the tent. So you'd leave the hotel about 5:30 in the morning. You'd be on site by about 6ish. They'll give you a cup of tea, bacon roll, sandwich, bit of toast, bit of oatmeal, whatever you fancied. And then you'll be in the tent doing what they call blocking through, which is similar to what I was doing before you all turned up. Is, have you got all the ingredients you need? Have you got all the equipment you need? So when they say ready, steady, bake, you're 100% there, and it's fair for everyone. And they have people on standby at the local 24-hour Tesco's or whatever it is to say, oh, Fred's forgot. They supply all the ingredients, but Fred now has decided he wants to put some weird ingredient in, and then some poor runner's got to go around the town to try and find that weird ingredient. After the first, so by week 3, if there was something that you was very particular about, like if bread week, people are very particular about the flour that they use for their bread, like they will have a favourite brand. So mine is Marriages because it's it's my local Essex mill, and I've always used it. Sorry, where was I? Listen, so on bread week, people want their own specific flour, and at that time it's probably easier that I used to say, like, I'll just bring my own flour, or if there was actually I self-sabotaged myself on bread week because I made the showstopper. I made an owl bread feature on a branch of baguettes, and there had to be different flavours, and one of my flavours had paprika in it. And there's just standard Sainsbury's paprika I'd been using, tasted perfectly fine. And one of the food tech people going, oh, we've got this lovely stuff. And I'd never used it before. I said, oh yeah, I've got that. And it was a different strength, and it just didn't come out as well. So it's always good if there's something you know that's going to make a difference, that you either take your own and be very clear to the food team, and they'll get whatever you want, to be quite honest. Right, so I made a baker's dozen this, so I've got 13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp these. If I was at home, once I've stamped them, I'll put them in the fridge for 30 minutes, an hour, so you can keep the detail. Same with any cookie. These are a bit softer, so they lose the detail, but the great thing is they'll come out, and I'll hold it up in hopefully 10-15 minutes, and it will just look like a gingerbread cookie. But when you put the glaze on, it brings out the detail of the stamp. Because I was a bit disappointed last night when I got them all out, it's like the stamp hasn't worked. But actually when you put the glaze on, it does. If you're doing shortbreads, it comes out perfectly clear. It's just the type of, because it's a really soft dough, this, you lose a little bit of definition. It's the dough's fault, not the stamp's fault. But if you put it in the fridge for 30 minutes, an hour, because they're a lot firmer then, as the heat hits it, it forms a crust, so you don't lose the definition. It's always a good tip if you're stamping stuff, just to put it in the fridge for a bit.
How long do the cookies are okay for? Like if you were making them for like presents and stuff like that? You could
make it, if you put them in a sealed bag or a Tupperware, you could probably make them a week in advance, I'd say, and you'll be safe. Because they've got a bit of moisture, the almond helps keep them a little bit moist. I made these last night. In our house they don't last long, but if you're making them for presents, make sure it's in a sealed bag or a sealed Tupperware, or put them in a Tupperware until you're ready to give them, and then put them in something fancy.
Yeah.
So flour your stamp, and then just give it a good press down, and then you get a lovely little star shape. Sorry, Nordic Ware people, close your ears. If you haven't got a Nordic Ware stamp, which is the best stamp, lovely people over there, go and see Pauline. if you've got a cut crystal sort of glass, like a tumbler that you drink your favourite spirit out of, normally at the bottom they've got a star shape on them. I always used to use one of those glasses, or pop to the charity shop and just pick up a cheap glass that you just use for stamping, but kind of a whiskey tumbler size you want, gin and tonic size. Similar, just flour on the bottom of your glass and stamp. But the good thing with these is you get multiple different styles of stars and lovely Christmas decorations. I'll be making lots of sort of shortbreads when we come up to the Christmas season.
Is that just like a normal size, like ice cream scoop, or can you just use like a spoon? So it's just that because you seem to get them like so perfect. So I'm like, because I know if I put a stamp on it, it'll splat out like that and it'll go off the edge.
Yes, actually, that's a very good point. So this is a medium-sized ice cream scoop. They come in 3 sizes. Kind of the big one the kids use because they like bucket loads of ice cream. I've nicked the medium one. So it's probably, I'd say, about 2 tablespoons worth. I'd say they're probably about 50, 60 grams in weight. But yeah, kind of a medium, what's that, probably 1.5 inches wide is good. But if you've got cookie cutters that are the same width as your stamp, what you can do is put your cookie cutter over the ball, stamp down in it, and then it can't expand outside of your cookie cutter. Did that make sense? What I said? No,
Would you be rolling out the dough first?
no, so I would, have I got anything to, probably not.
How come your cookies don't spread when you put them in the oven? I just like spreading.
Yeah, so if you put them in the fridge for half hour or an hour, that will stop a lot of the spreading. Yeah, so if you put your round tin, like your cookie cutter, pop that in the middle, and then you stamp it with the cutter, because then it can only go as far as that disc, and it gives you a nice round edge. Flour your cookie cutter as well. It was just by chance that this cookie stamp was perfect for that scoop. It was more luck. But the little ones, I've used the same stamp, and I've just stamped it, and you've just got the middle bit of the pattern. So if they're not too big, you're fine. But I think if you divided this into 12, this stamp will be pretty much there. Right, so let's get these stamped. Again, you don't want to squish them to they're super thin. You want to keep a decent thickness to them. They will poof up a bit. So don't kind of stamp them to within a millimetre of their life.
Are they crunchy then, or are they a bit soft in the middle?
Generally, they're a bit soft in the middle, so a bit crunchy on the outside with a softer middle. I love, and they're softer if they're warm straight out the oven as well. So if you want them more crunchy, just put them in for an extra couple of minutes. They won't burn; they'll just dry out a bit more. So again, these go in for between. Not in my oven 15 minutes, but if you want them a little softer, I'll take them out at 13. If I want a little crunchy, I'd leave them in a couple of extra minutes. Just keep an eye on them that they're not going too brown. And then if you leave them out on the side for the day, any sort of steam will also evaporate out. So don't put them away warm, otherwise they will keep the moisture if you seal them away warm. Right, so I'm going to pop these into the Neff oven. 160, I'll put these in for about 14 minutes. On bake-off, if you ever go in or out of the oven, you have to put your hand up and wait for a camera crew to come to put them in or take them out, which is infuriating if everyone's trying to get their stuff out at the same time. You're like, I need to get it out, it's going to burn. And they're like, 1 minute. It's like, so I need to work the timer now. And this is far more technical than my, oh, no. Don't want to change the temperature. Starts repeating, so I'll go for that. 10. 160. Right. Here we go. Right. This is very fancy, this oven, so bear with me. I'll put them in for 15 minutes, we'll see how it goes. Right, so next thing I'm going to do, while they're cooking, I'm going to make just the glaze that goes on top of it. You don't need to do the glaze if you don't want to. You won't offend me if you don't want the glaze. If I'm just baking these at home, I just bake the cookie, I don't make them look fancy. But it is 100 grams of icing sugar. I never bother sifting flour. Flour is so well milled now, and generally you don't get weevils in it and things like that, unless you, like me, find a flour that you've had at the back of the cupboard for a couple of years. And get told off by your wife for holding flour. But generally, everything's so well refined now, you don't need to sieve it. The only two things I sieve are icing sugar because it clumps, and cocoa powder because I find that clumps as well, and you want it nice and fine to go through. So whenever you see that recipe, like sift your flour 3 times, it's pointless. It's just someone trying to be far too fancy. So I'll just push this through a sieve. The other great thing about being on Bake Off is they've got a wonderful support team that do all your cleaning up for you, which is great when you're away for the weekend, but really bad on the Monday evening when you're cooking dinner and you walk out the kitchen thinking it's all going to be clean, and then your wife whacks you around the head and sends you back in the kitchen to clean up your own mess. But they're brilliant. I think one of the things I didn't think of going into the tent was everyone bakes their bake thinking, oh, I'm going to bake it, put it on the plate, and the judges are going to judge it immediately. But they don't. So, especially on hot weeks, which is generally chocolate or ice, if they do something ice cream, the weather goes against you, is that it could be sitting around for an hour and a half before they judge it, because they've got to clean up everything that's been a mess. And I don't know why I didn't think about that before I went into the tent, but you suddenly see everything spotless again. And it does take some time. And so I'm just going to break an egg and put an egg white into one pot, just give it a little whisk so it loosens it up. And then we won't need the egg yolk again. If you want to keep the egg yolks, put them in a box for custard, or throw an extra egg yolk in your omelette in the morning so you don't waste it. So again, it's not a lot of liquid, just these are medium eggs. You just want to beat it a little bit, just till it goes to a little bit frothy. You're not making a meringue, you just don't want it to be like the congealed egg white sort of texture. I think the worst week for, I don't want to call it boredom, but not having much to do, like constantly, is bread week, because you kind of make your dough, then you've got to wait for an hour or two for it to prove, and everyone's sitting around chatting. Then there's mad panic while you're doing your bit, and then you're sitting around again. And it's a really long day, because on the first day you do your signature bake and a technical challenge, and then on the Sunday you generally do your longer showstopper. So the first day you do 2 lots of bread in one day, and you tend to get a bit feral because you're getting bored, because there's only so much sitting down looking in your oven that you can do. And Noel got told off because he wanted to start a disco in the tent. He brought his own music in, and he got Sandy dancing with him, and all the bakers started to join in, and the production crew went mad. It's like, no, you can't do that. It's like, get back out, leave them alone, they're meant to be baking. And it was a really hot day on bread week, and the production crew, again, the camera guys were getting really hot, so you could roll up the sides of the tents to get a breeze through. So they'd rolled them all up, Paul come in and went absolutely mad. It's like, it's bread week, that's going to affect their proving. And we're melting, we don't care about the bread anymore, just like, we want to be cool. It's bonkers weather environment in the tent, because we started filming late May, and you're doing every weekend. So late May you turn up, it's like 0 in the tent. If you're around for the second baking later, I'll tell a story about how we melted loads of butter and ruined all their warming drawers, me and Jan. But it's freezing in the morning, so you're trying to warm up your butter. If you're doing cakes and you know you're going to be baking in a few hours, you're trying to get your butter warm and it's like a brick. And then the sun comes out, the tent goes up to like 100, 110 degrees. It's just like such a swing of temperature, or it starts pouring down with rain, it's really humid, and you're doing your sugar work and everything's just collapsing. So again, just make it a little bit frothy. Pour that into your icing sugar and just give it a stir through. This will come out starting, it'll be quite thick, so what we'll do is probably put in about a teaspoon or so of water. I'll see how it looks. And what you're looking for is a light glaze, like a Krispy Kreme, rather than a really thick white icing. You just want to give it a quick dip and let it roll off. So generally I try and get all the egg mixed in first and then add the water to see what extra I need. Because you want it nice and smooth, because what we're just going to dunk, give it a little shake and put it onto a rack to cool. So that's the kind of thickness it is at the moment, just need it a little bit runnier than that. Again, it's all just by eye when you're doing icing, whatever you fancy. If you want thick icing, go for thick icing. If you want to use a bit of vanilla extract rather than water, pop that in instead of your water. It'll thin it down, give you a bit of extra flavour. Or if you want to put a little bit of lemon in there, or whatever you fancy. Don't be afraid to experiment, I think was one of the big lessons we learned, kind of. Have fun with your baking. Yeah, so we filmed, sorry, going back to the how long are you there, we filmed every weekend, and if every baker obviously has got their own life going on in the background, so you get home on Monday with every good intention to try and bake all the way through to Thursday, so you practice, you bake for the weekend. But life gets in its way. We had to, I think someone was in uni, so they had a bit more time because they wasn't in lessons all day. They just kind of backed off of, I think it was Liam actually. So he had good tutors. They said, don't worry, catch up when you're back. Myself, I was working full time, and I was actually working with Wolverhampton Council pension scheme. So I was driving up to here from Essex, about a 2.5 hour drive, for a couple of hour meeting twice a week. So I lost a lot of time, and then on biscuit week was my worst week because I was up here twice. I had to go to Dublin to see a client. So I rang up my boss. There was only my boss and the HR manager who knew I was on the show. I said, look, I've not practiced at all. And I had my brother-in-law's funeral on the Friday. So I said, I need to take Thursday if I haven't done any practicing at all. So on the Thursday, we had to make a biscuit board game. So the Viennese rolls that I couldn't count was our signature. So they were rhubarb and custard flavoured. And I was pretty confident with those, but I hadn't made this biscuit board game, and it was an old game that my wife had from when she was a kid. It was called Cop It. They're like little cone hats that you chase each other around the board. But the ball shape is a wagon wheel. So I had to work out how to make this wagon wheel with 2 different flavoured biscuits. And I made it probably 3 times, and every time I took it out of the oven, it broke. And I ended up Thursday night, I threw it in the bin, hadn't even got to icing it, never got to the end of doing it, I thought, okay, it's the week I'm out, I can live with it, it's been a shocking week. Went to the funeral, went straight, me and my wife had to go to the funeral in separate cars, because none of our family knew that I was on Bake Off, so I had to shoot off early. I forget what I claimed I had to go and do, and then Anne went back with our sister and the kids. And then I went on Friday night, went straight to the hotel, and I had a big bag with all my baking tins in. And the first person I saw was Stacey from the show, who was another baker, who I got on fabulously with. And she forgot I'd been to a funeral, and the first thing she said is, have you got a dead body in that bag? And it was just like, it was exactly what I needed, because I went, well, no, we left him at the crematorium, so you're all right. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's just like, bar. And we went and just had far too many drinks. Got into the tent, it was probably my best week ever. When I was doing the board, because it was a wagon wheel shape, I wasn't filling in the gaps. I thought, why don't I fill them in with the alternate biscuits and bake it as a whole disc? And it didn't fall apart. And it was just one of those, it was miraculous that it worked. And then other things you could be so super prepared for, you go in the tent and it's just a disaster. Right, so I think I'll stick to about, maybe that runniness, that one, maybe a little bit more. That should do. We've got about 4 minutes till they come out. We have got ones ready for you to try, but I will get them out and so you can try some warm ones as well. I'll just move that over. So if you've got any other questions, either bake off or just baking Christmas. I don't know what you're getting for Christmas, but
How do you stop the lemon tart?
the actual lemon part, the flaring bit, if it's cracking, it's overcooked. So you want to take it out. If you get it out of the oven and you give it a wiggle, if you've got like the normal tart pan's about 8 inches, I guess. What you want is the middle 3 inches still to look like it's underdone and it's got a wobble, and then the residual heat just cooks through. Generally, and I've had exactly the same problem, and I still do today. I leave it in a few minutes too long, and it looks all right, and then suddenly it starts going like there's a tectonic plates moving apart. And if that does happen, lots of ice and sugar on top, a bit of cream, no one knows. I've hit many a mistake under ice and sugar or a little bit of decoration. I'm sorry, I keep digressing. So it was back to we did it every weekend. In lockdown, they was in a hotel, it moved to a country home or a hotel in Essex, and they were there for the whole period, which is a big commitment. I think they filmed it over they filmed it over a shorter period because I think they filmed 2 days, had 2.5 days off to practice, then film another, so they kind of got more filming in through the week. But I think there was still, if you're in the final, they was there till week, about 6 weeks. But what was lovely, because I was talking to the first year that did lockdown, is that Matt Lucas did a pop quiz or something like that one night. So all of the, as they call them, the talent on the show. It's like Paul I think he did a pizza making night. Prue did something, Sandy did something. So there was always something for them to do in the evenings if they wanted to, or they could just go to their rooms, it's up to them. But they made it a fun experience. But I think that's a fairer approach because everyone's got the same amount of time to prepare. As I was saying, I had a really busy week on Biscuit Week where some of the other contestants weren't working, had no commitments and had a week to practice things. Especially pudding weeks was a week where we had to make trifles that you turned out upside down, and they had to stand up and they had to have a pattern and look lovely, and a steamed pudding. Stacey on pudding week tested her puddings 10 times during the week. I think I could fit it too, because they take so long to steam, I just didn't physically have the time. So there is, I don't want to call it unfairness, because everyone's got different lives, and that's all part of the show, and I think that's what makes it great. But you can tell, especially as you get to the back end, that you do need more time to practice. In hindsight, I would have taken more time off work, because when I went through the process and got on the show, I was thinking back to when we were talking to John earlier who does the Lichfield Festival, that the first shows were done in Bakewell. And I think it was Martha Collinson was doing a degree and studying full time and doing the baking. So I thought, you don't need much time off, it's a bit of baking, how hard could it be? But it's progressed so much, and the people in the show, especially on our year, we had Sophie and Stephen Carter Bailey, phenomenal bakers, should have been professional. They were that good going into the tent. And I'm like, yeah, I could knock up a rock then, I'll be all right. But they pick a really good, the casting crew pick a really good group of people that end up gelling. I think no one, the personalities all gel well, and you've got common ground as well, because everyone loves baking. Everyone's there to share tips and help each other. And I've always likened it to, it's more like running a marathon where you're fighting against the course, you're not really racing the person next to you. and the people next to you are cheering you on to make you get to the end. And that's what it's like in the tent. It's got that camaraderie versus 100-metre sprint where you're just kicking everyone. Like an American show, because there's a big prize, gets a bit more cutthroat. You win a bunch of flowers and a cake plate, and the kudos of winning. So it is a different feel to it. Oh, that bit of filling waffle, I do like to waffle, I go on for a tangent, so I apologise for that, means that they're done. Hopefully. So they're done. You could do, so these will be slightly softer. I could put them in for a couple more minutes for a little bit harder. Again, this is a slightly different oven, but probably about 30 seconds different would be about it. So quite accurate. Oh, one of the other things that made me laugh, something's buzzing. When Stacey, I think she was in the semi-finals, when she was baking her showstopper, she did the slide and glide door, but if you pull it out, it's you kind of wiggle it a bit and you can take the door out to clean it. She didn't realise that, so she's pulled the door open to put she had cakes in there, and the door's come off in her hand. Now, because you've still got 4 spare, by that time, semi-finals, there's only 4 of you there, you've got 4 spare benches around you. They said, we can get another oven on quick, and she's holding the door with her gloves for the next half hour against the oven to keep the heat in. And do you want to switch? And she's like, no, I can't open it again. My cake's going. It was hysterical to see. On the WhatsApp group after, you never believe it, I broke the oven. It's good telly. People will laugh. So these, as they come out the oven, still quite soft. Generally leave them for about 5 minutes on the pan, just to let them cool down and firm up a bit. I was going to be brave. Yep. Don't think I brought a spatula. As I slide it off, just to cool it down a bit quicker on here. Yeah, the spices, really, you can really smell. Makes your house smell of Christmas, these cookies. The bake I'm going to do at 2 o'clock is called a quark stollen. Stollens are normally leavened breads with marzipan in, but the Germans also do a version that's made with quark cheese. They do it in Sainsbury's, which is a miracle. I had to do some hunting. I had to Google what it was first. But it's a low-fat cheese, but it's got a bit of a tang to it. So if you couldn't get quark, you could use buttermilk or Greek yogurt, something like that. But it's an unleavened stollen, so you use baking powder. No, sorry, it's not a yeast leavened one. So you bake it in a tin. But it's got all those marzipan, cherry, cranberry flavours. It's got a little bit of cinnamon, not a lot, because you really want the flavours of the almonds and that in it. So that's the one for later. Oh, it's Father Christmas. I have been good, honest. Right, so that's those done. Again, if I was doing these at home, to be fair, they've held the pattern okay. I would have put them in the fridge for 30 minutes, an hour, just to make them set up nice and firmly. I want them to cool down a bit because I do want to dunk them. But if I look at you, they look all right. You can faintly see it, but once you put the glaze on, where have I hit the glaze? Hopefully it won't fall apart because it's still a bit too warm to glaze, really. You just let it drip off, and you can see the snowflake really comes out in any pattern you've got on. So it really makes a difference just dipping it in that glaze. What I will do, I'm not going to glaze the rest because otherwise you're going to get really sticky fingers if you want a warm one. But if you want to glaze one, loads of glazed and set, because it's got egg white in. You leave it out on the side for an hour or two and it goes nice and hard and crusty. If you just make a water glaze with ice and sugar, it will still be tacky and sticky, but these go quite hard, gives it a little bit of a shell. So that is it. Sorry. You could use a brush, yep. rather than dip, yeah, if you don't want to
Yeah.
get messy like me. And I'm sure they must have a sink somewhere here. If not, we'll plumb one in. So yeah, you could use a brush, or just drizzle a little bit from a teaspoon over the top, because it's runny enough. It'll run, or smear it. Just use a little butter knife, palette knife. Just you can smear a bit on. Anything, just give it a bit of juice for Christmas. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Please come and grab a cookie. I'm going to work out how to move this with sticky hands and not get